All right, so could everybody find that? So again, in session 10, it's next week's session, not this week's. But I just want to go over something in here really fast to do everything I can to change your life. So it is a version of the Skin Eyes Retouch one here. It's actually one that was pretty well done. I don't remember. This could have been mine. It could have been someone else's. That part doesn't matter. But does everybody have this thing open? It's in week number 10 in your session 10 folders. It's called Skin Eyes Retouch version 3. Do you guys not have it? No? Son of a bitch. Okay, really quickly, I'm going to put it up on the server. So if everybody can go to the server right now. So I'm going to put it up and not in either one of the drop boxes, just into the first part of it right next to the drop boxes. And do me a favor, copy it down to your computer. Don't try to run it off the server, because if everybody's running it off the server, it'll cripple the server. So again, in the Engelhardt folder, right at that level, next to the drop boxes, is the Skin Eyes Retouch version 3. If you can just download that file and open it up. So what? Is this working? And did it open Photoshop? The small things in life that make me so happy. It's ridiculous. Okay, so in Photoshop here. So a lot of you were actually doing things where when you were doing the retouching on this, you did the tonal work on this, and then you were actually trying to go in and change the contouring on this as well to again give the shape more shape to the face. So this is the trick again, and this is specific to the people who are interested in shooting beauty in this class. But it's not just beauty. If you think about doing food, food has form and shape, and so if you're trying to accentuate the dimensionality of that form, that's what contouring is all about. That's the reasoning behind it. So, but at its simplest, it's also simply a contrast move. I mean, that's what we're really talking about. Areas in this image that are already light, you want to make lighter, and areas in this image that are dark, you want to go ahead and make them darker. I mean, that's the goal in all of this, right? That actually builds dimension in here. So most of you are used to doing contrast like this. So go ahead and do this one with me, even though it's the wrong way to do it. Click on and add a curve on here, and we're going to click on add curve. And then up in the properties panel, if you just click and drag your shadows and you pull them slightly down and take your highlights and you push them slowly up, you've actually built contrast in here. But look what the color ended up happening to this image. If you turn this curve on and off, you can see, yes, it actually bumped the contrast, but it also increased the saturation and actually shifted the color yellow. So to keep that from happening, you can actually use blending modes here. So if you click on the normal blending mode of this curve layer and go all the way down and say luminosity, then what you're saying in here is that I only want to shift the tonal structure of this. I don't want to shift the color, and I don't want to change the saturation. So now when you turn it on, it's a little bit better, but this is still, in my opinion, not the best way to actually do contrast. So I'm going to show you the way I do it and the way I think you should do it. Mine comes out of doing it for beauty and fashion, but I've seen people do this for landscapes. I've seen people do this for food. What we're going to do now is we are going to actually use the luminosity of this image to build in contrast. So to do that, if you take a look over at your channels palette, we've talked about this before. If you click on the red channel palette, these are generalizations. These are not hardcore rules, but these are generalizations. That the red channel, when you look at it, really represents the contrast in the image. So if you take a look at this, you can see that the highlights are pretty blown out, and there's very little dark in here, but what is dark in here is very dark in here. So the pupil of her eyes, some of the tone in her hair. If you click on the green channel is actually considered to be the one that's got the most detail in it. And the reason that is that because our eyes are far more sensitive to green than they are to any other color. So that's also why in digital files, you end up having twice the number of green pixels in a digital file as you do red and blue. So at any rate, this represents kind of the middle ground. It really gives you, the most detail in your image. And then finally, the last one, if you look at the blue image, blue largely represents noise. So a trick that you should write this down, just because I'm not going to remember to tell this to you again. A lot of times when people are trying to soften up an image, or to actually not soften an image, but to reduce the noise in an image, they will simply go in and blur the blue channel alone, because that doesn't impact the detail which you've got in your green channel, and it doesn't impact the contrast which you've got in the red channel, but it will step on the noise a little bit. So it's just something to keep in mind. But for our purposes, what we're going to do is we are going to use the green channel to do the selection of luminosity for us. So I'm going to go back up and I'm going to click on the whole RGB composite. So I'm clicked on the RGB channel at the very top, Nikayla. Yeah, exactly, because that's where the noise is. And so if you're trying to eliminate noise, it's just a lot of these are old school tricks. Now you've got denoising that happens really well inside of Camera Raw, or even the Camera Raw filter. I would go to those likely first, especially if you've got a lot of noise that you're trying to step on. But again, it's just the things that I've worked with forever. Might as well let you know, right? All right, so anyway, I'm going to select the RGB channel at the very top so you see the whole figure. We are going to hover over the thumbnail. You are not going to select the green channel, just hover over the thumbnail, but you're going to load it as a selection. Command, click on it, loads it as a selection, and then come over to your layers palette and simply jump this to its own layer. And if you take a look at it, if you turn off the image on the bottom here, what you can see this happens is this. So you need to remember how selections are made. Selections and masks work exactly the same principle. When you build a selection, things that are lighter are more heavily selected, things that are darker are less selected. So if you take a look at this right now, you can see that the shadow underneath her chin, there's nothing that has been selected there. There's no information there because that's really dark in my image. But if you look at the shirt is actually really white, so it is really dominantly selected. So what I basically have here is a selection of the highlights of this image. Yes?
Question, you know the old type of printing that color film used where it was like the magenta and the cyan and the yellow?
Yeah.
You have to like layer it on there?
You mean like dye transfers?
Yes.
Yes.
Could you do a dye transfer but edit it in Photoshop first? So like, does that make sense?
Oh, it makes all sense except that you can't get dye transfer material anymore.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry.
Can't have
Yeah, no, it's tragic. Have you ever seen a real dye transfer?
I saw them the other day.
Oh yeah, and at the MOCP?
So gorgeous. No, at the Art Institute.
Oh yeah, same idea. Yeah, no, they're stunning.
Yeah.
They're stunning, yeah. So speaking of, that's when Playboy, when I was shooting there, that's how, if they had to retouch something, so a girl had a pimple and they need to take the pimple out, right? They would take a 35 millimeter slide, so transparency, Kodachrome is what we all shot. They would blow that up to a 16x20 dye transfer print. They would mount the dye transfer print on a table that vibrated, and then they would take an X-Acto knife and they would just drop the point of the X-Acto knife down onto the pimple, and the vibration of the table would actually scratch it away, and it gives you really precise control. And then they would use the same dyes that you use for a dye transfer to hand paint it back in, the skin tone back in. So a week later, and $1,000 for the dye transfer, and $1,000 for the retoucher's time, and a week's worth of time, you could remove a pimple. I know.
But it's cooler than
Yeah, anyway, don't get caught up in that. All right, so this is largely, I've jumped this as a selection of my highlights. So this is what I'm going to rename it. Double click on the layer and call it highlights.
How did you select this?
Simply hover over, here I'll show you again really quickly. Hover over the thumbnail don't pick the green, just hover over the thumbnail, hold down the command key and click. It's what we've been doing all semester. So this is now loaded primarily the highlight selections, right? And then back over to your layers palette, command J, and then double click on it and call it highlights. And say okay. So then I'm going to turn that layer off. I'm going to select my background layer again. I'm going to come over to the green again, command click to load it as a selection. So this is just another selection of my highlights. But if I invert this selection, it will be my shadows. So come up to the select menu, down to inverse, and jump that to its own layer, command J. And then double click on that and call it shadows. And you can see what it looks like if you turn off the background layer. So you can see now that the areas that were white, like the shirt, is completely transparent. However, her irises, the pupils of her eyes, all of that are completely selected here. So now I've actually split my image, but it's the visual content of my image. I am not pushing around the other tones that existed in the base of this. I've actually copied and separated these out. So then to turn this into a contrast move, you're going to put both of these into one group. So select both highlights and shadows, come over to the menu that's over at the right-hand side of the Levels tab, click on it, and say you want to do a new group from layers. And we're going to call this contrast.
Is there a certain setting I should have turned on to be able to see the onion skin?
No, you shouldn't even be in select and mask.
Or, like, do you know what I'm talking about? The dots?
Yeah, this is not correct at the very top. So throw this one away, throw shadows away.
Okay.
Good, and then turn off the bottom of this to just make sure that this actually is your shadows, that's not your highlights. So start all over, throw that guy away as well. Don't worry, we'll do it quick. All right, so come over your green, hover over the, nope, you're selecting it, you don't want to select it. Go up to the very top and select the whole RGB composite. Come down, hover over the thumbnail, just over the thumbnail, command click. Perfect, and then over here, command J. And then rename that highlights. And then turn that eyeball off. Select the base again. Come back over, hover over the thumbnail, command click. And then up to your select menu, down to inverse at the top. Yep, command J. And then click on that and call it shadows.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we've actually got Eli.
For the mode, does it pass through from the new group from layers?
You don't need to worry about that. We're changing all of that. So I am going to open up my contrast group right now, and we are going to change the blending mode of this. So to change the blending mode, you can go ahead and turn on your base layer as well right now. Click on highlights, and we're going to change the blending mode from normal down to screen. Click on your shadows and take that blending mode from normal down to multiply. And in this case, you can see you've built in serious contrast that is based on the content of the image itself with all of the detail of that contrast move in there. So I'm not worrying about clipping my highlights. I'm not worrying about blowing those out. I'm not worried about burying my shadows. I'm not worried about that part. However, and this is just a general rule, in most cases, you want your shadow shifting to be half of what your highlight is. So if you click on your shadow layer in here and drop its opacity down to 50%, what you've done is you've cut the strength of that in half. But the reason we put this into a group, and I'm leaving my highlights at 100%, but the reason I put this into a group is that now I can change the strength of the contrast by using the opacity of the entire group. So again, when I look at this, when I look at my screen here, it's much better than this projector. This is an uncalibrated projector. But nonetheless, I can turn this on and off, and you can see I have built in this beautiful contoured contrast. However, if yours is too strong, simply drop the opacity of the group. And the reason you have it in a group is it keeps the relationship, as long as it's in the group, the highlights will always be twice as strong as the shadows. But now I can use the opacity to control them both collectively. Does that make sense? Guys, you'll never make contrast any other way. This shit's beautiful. This is not that blown out, oh my God, what happened there. This, I'm telling you right now, you will never make contrast any other way. You'll never bump the contrast of an image any other way. If for some reason, go ahead and crank it back up again to 100%. If for some reason you needed this to be stronger, duplicate your contrast group, Command J. You can do this all day long. All right. You can close that up. We don't need to save that.
That's all across the board with anything involving contrast?
Anything, yes. Yes, where you're trying to actually augment the contrast that already exists. You're not trying to fight it. You're not trying to go in the opposite direction. Don't worry, we get into trying to fight contrast in what we're doing later today. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is I want to make sure that everybody is understanding how to do split frequency work the correct way. So we're going to start with the image that you did for your homework. We are not going to do the entire image by any means, but I just want to make sure everybody understands the process. If you do have your tablet today, it would be a great time to actually pull it out and connect it right now. But the image that I want to work on is the one that was for your homework. So to get to it, if you go into our session number 7, in the assignment folder, this is where you've got the image. It's on the green screen. Now, if you've already used again, if you want to use the file that you did for your homework, that's fine, but I want you to start from scratch, and I don't want you to lose your homework. So simply make a copy of your homework, open it up into Photoshop, and throw away all the retouching that you did. I want to start from very, very, very scratch here. But again, I don't want you to lose your homework, so make sure that you make a duplicate of this. Otherwise, if you have the original file and you didn't overwrite it when you actually did your homework, simply open up that file from the beginning, and we'll start from the very get-go. All right, I am not going to bother knocking this out. I'm not going to go through any of that part. This is not about doing that work. This is about doing the retouching on this image. So does everybody have this thing open? Anybody not have one of these things open? Okay, so our first move is to duplicate this twice. Command J, Command J. Double click on the name for the one that's in the middle and type in low color and tone. Then on the top layer, double click on that name, and you're going to name it high detail and texture. Turn off the eyeball for the high layer, activate the low layer, the one that's in the middle, and then again, we are going to blur this to get rid of all of the high frequency, and we only end up with the low frequency. So I tend to zoom in, like I look at this area right here. The small little hairs that are on her upper lip is detail. I want to get rid of the pores that are underneath her eye. For the most part, a little bit of that could actually be tone and color, but for the most part, I'm just trying to pick an area that'll give me the feedback that I'm looking for to get rid of what I consider to be the high frequency detail. So, with the low color and tone selected, come up to the filter menu. Come. Say what?
Did you say to duplicate our layers?
No, you mean to make the safeties?
Well, yeah, but didn't you say when you were going over it that we're supposed to duplicate the low and high and then we edit on the duplicate?
Yes, but we're not finished with building our low and high yet. We have to do the work on them first, and then you duplicate them. Okay, so with the low layer selected and the high layer turned off, up to the filter menu, down to blur, down to Gaussian blur, and I'm going to start with a 1 for my Gaussian blur, and I can still see all the fine little hairs. So I'm going to click the delete key and put in 2. I can still see the little hairs. Delete key 3. I'm beginning to lose the little hairs. I think I might still see a few of them, and I'm also seeing what I think is still a little bit of the detail in the pores that are up in here. So delete again and go to 4. And I feel like that's pretty much smoothed out all of the pores underneath her underneath her eye. All of the fine little hairs are gone. So 4 is good for me. And again, you don't want to push this any harder, because what we're doing is we're saying what should be in the high layer, what should be in the low layer. I want to make sure that that splits at the perfect spot so that I am retouching the high frequency detail in the high layer, and I haven't gone so aggressively with this that I've pushed that material into the low layer. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and say okay to that. Then I'm going to click on the high layer to make it active. I'm going to turn its eyeball on, and I'm going to come up to the image menu, down to apply image. When this opens up, in the layer drop-down menu, I'm going to select low. Make sure your channel is set to RGB. In the blending mode, I'm going to click on that drop-down menu, and I'm going to come down to subtract. I'm going to put in a 2 for the scale and a 128 for the offset. And your image should look like a high-pass filter. So I'm leaving this up here so everybody can see this. I need to make sure, I'm waiting to make sure everybody okay with this? And we've gotten this far. No. Where did I get law? Where?
See a scalar offset.
It's because you haven't hit your blending mode yet. So go down to subtract, and then you'll get scale and offset.
Thank you.
Yep, and that hurts good. Yeah. And then we're going to go ahead and say okay to that. So once we do that, you should have something that looks like this gray part on top of your image. But you can see in here, this is all the detail that we were looking for. I've got all the pores that are underneath her eyes are right there. I've got the little fine hairs in here. What I don't have is a whole lot of the area that's in here in between, because that's all just tone and color. There is no texture in there. So at any rate, are we good? All right. So then with this high detail still selected, you're going to change the blending mode from normal down to linear light. And then I'm going to hold down my shift key and click the low layer, so that I've got my high layer is selected and my low layer is selected as well, because I want to put these into a group. So again, both of them are highlighted. Click on the menu that's to the right, come out and say new group from layers, and call your group FS. For frequency separation. And then before you do anything else, turn the eyeball of this on and off and make sure you don't see any change. If you see a change, you did something wrong. If you did something wrong, throw it away and start from the very beginning. It is so much easier to start over than it is to try to fix what you did wrong. Okay, and then open this up, and now we are going to make the safety layers that Eli was talking about. So click on your low copy and tone layer and just hit Command J. And then this is where we're going to be doing all of our work is going to be on this tone copy. And I'm going to show you all the advantages of doing this during this demo right now. So then we're going to do the same thing with the high detail. So click on the high detail and texture layer, Command J that. But you'll see now that my image gets really crunchy, it gets really contrasty, and it's because I'm dealing with a soft light, essentially a soft light blending mode here. It's a linear light, but it functions like a soft light. It's building contrast. I need to knock that down. This is not what my image should be looking like. So to do that, you're going to change the blending mode of this copy, of the high copy, change the blending mode back to normal. And then finally, because this now looks like the gray thing, it doesn't look like my image should look, if you hover your cursor between the high copy and the high, hold down your Option key, you will see your cursor turns into a little box of marching ants with an arrow that points down to the left. If you click on that, we have now clipped that layer to the one underneath it, meaning that everything that's underneath it so everything about this layer up here is inherited from the one that's underneath it. So even though it's got a blending mode of normal, it's inherited the linear light from underneath this guy, but I haven't doubled it up. That's the trick here. So, has everybody got this? Should have 4 layers. Where did you get lost?
Restart.
Oh, that's okay. All right, so really quickly, turn off your top layer. On your bottom layer, just go, and you're going to do a Gaussian blur of 4. Filter. Blur, no. Oh, yeah, that'll actually do it. It removes the last one. You're good. You're good. You're good. Turn on your high layer, make it active. Eyeball image. Down to apply image. Yep. In the drop down menu, instead of one at a time, start at the top.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. In the merge layer, click on that drop down, you're going to come down to the low layer. Yep, RGB is fine, so then change your blending mode to subtract. Perfect, and then put in 2 and 128. And say okay. And then change the blending mode of that from normal down to linear light. It's kind of right there, good, perfect. Click on your, hold down Shift key and click on both of them. Then come to your drop down menu, group from layers, call it FS. Let's see, okay. Turn that eyeball on and off. You see no change, perfect. Open that guy up. Perfect. Select your bottom layer first. Right, and then go to your top layer now. And you're going to change the blending mode of that from linear light to normal. And then hover between those two, hold down your Option key, and click. And you're where you need to be.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we can actually start doing the work that we want on this. So what I will say that this has happened in not only some of the ones that I graded for this class, but also some of the ones that I graded for the last class. There were people who came in here for this, like this area right in here. So I'm looking at her cheek that's right underneath this part right here. And they actually were copying texture from a different place on this face to replace this texture right here. The problem with that is that if you change the focus of this, you change the depth of you change what the focus of the whole image is. So to emulate this, to show you what that actually looks like in terms of doing this right here, we're going to do a different tool. We're going to use the blur tool. So if you look at the toolbar over on your panel, underneath the gradient tool, there's something that looks like a teardrop. If you click on this and do a flyout, this is the blur tool. I'm going to say grab that blur tool, and then in terms of your blending mode here, it's a brush. So you can make this a hard brush. You can make it a pretty good sized brush. A normal blending mode, a strength of 100, and then just come over into this area on her face right in here and simply run it around on here so that you actually blur this out. And then zoom out. And what you can see is that you have shifted the focus of this part of her face. This part of her face is no longer in the same plane. It has either been pushed further back and is out of focus, or it's been pulled forward to the camera and it's out of focus. But nonetheless, it is not believable because everything around it is in focus. It is no longer in focus. So people, if you were, for instance, saying grabbing texture from down here and replacing it up in here, the texture down here is not in focus. So you are replacing texture with something that is not in focus, and that's just as bad as not replacing the bad texture to begin with. Eli.
My brush is like doing this.
That's because you are working on, you're not, do you have sampled all layers checked?
Yeah.
Yeah, again, you can only do this work working on a specific layer. If you start blending or mixing layers, you're screwed. All right, so at any rate, I just wanted to point that whole part out here. So I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that, to bring it back. If you did more than 1 or 2 strokes of that, just go back into your history to the point where you created the clipping mask, and we're actually now going to start on this. So I am going to start on the pimple that's up at the very top of this girl's forehead that's up here. Now again, we can do this and watch it in real time, watch the whole figure, or you can do it looking just at the high layer or the low layer that you want to fix. And the reason I like looking at the high layer and low layer is right now we're going to use the clone stamp tool. It's the only tool I ever use in the high layer because again, I want a pixel to pixel replacement. And I want to keep that texture as strong as I can possibly keep it. To change this, where do you sample from? Where do you set your source point from to do this? And when I look at this, it's confusing because the darkness of the tone and color here are throwing me off. I'm just looking for the proper texture that should go on this. So if you hold down your Option key and click on the eyeball for your high layer, it gets rid of the tone and color, and now you can zoom in on this thing and you can see exactly where you want to pick your texture from. So if I look around this, the area that's right above the part on the scab that's on her face, right above it would be good. Right below it would be good, but if you go too far below it, you actually hit, there's texture underneath her that's actually got hair in the skin itself. You don't want to pick from that. If you go too far to the left, you run into her eyelashes, her eyebrows, and if you go too far to the right, you're safe over there as well. So doing it this way, I'm not worried about what's happening in my color and tone. So I'm gonna hit the S key to get the clone stamp tool. In your clone stamp tool, we need to set this up very specifically. You want your hardness to be in the mid 80s. You want normal blending mode, 100% opacity, 100% flow, and current layer only. You can also check aligned. And then I'm simply going to, again, I'm working on my high copy. Make my brush a little bit larger using my bracket keys. And then I'm gonna hover right down over here. Again, I'm avoiding the area down in here where there's hair actually in that skin texture because that'll just bring the hair up into here and then I got another problem. So I'm gonna just come to, again, if you think of it as a clock face, about 5 o'clock, hold down my Option key, click to do a sample, and simply get rid of it. And it's now completely gone. However, if you hold down your Option key and click on the eyeball of this high layer again, it turns everybody else back on. You can see it's not completely gone because that scab also has inflammation around it. The redness that is in this area is not a texture, it is color and tone. So I need to fix that, but that is down on my color and tone layer. So if you go down to your color and tone layer, hold down your Option key and click on the eyeball, you can see the problem. There's a highlight and a shadow there. That is all color and tone. You do not use the clone stamp tool down here. It is a pixel for pixel replacement. You will see it a mile away. You need to blend this in so that it fits into the surrounding area. To do that, the healing tools are what you use for this. So again, make sure that you don't just turn on the eyeball for color and tone, but you make it active, because if you look at my screen right now, I'm still working on my high color layer, on my high copy right here. It's the one that's still active, even I've turned the eyeball off. Make sure that you click on the low one. So again, I saw people run into this same thing. There were people who got confused. There were people who actually had the clone stamp tool sampling the texture layer and then coming down and using that to work on the low layer here. And so they brought texture into the layer that was supposed to be only color and tone. And then it was a shit show from that point on because there's no fixing that. So anyway, down here with the color and tone part, we are going to go to the healing tools. So again, the thing that looks like a little Band-Aid. You do not want to use the spot healing tool. You want to come down to the healing brush tool. This is the tool that you get to control. Again, the setup for this is, if you click on your drop-down menu, 50% hardness. Unlike the spot healing, unlike the clone stamp tool in the texture group, I actually want this to be softer. I want to blend it in. I'm not worried about stepping on texture though, because this is not texture. This is strictly tone and color. So then I'm going to come down here, and again, I can see exactly where I need to sample from here to do this. So I'm going to hold down my Option key. I'm going to click roughly in that same spot, and then I'm simply going to get rid of that by scrubbing all around it. And then again, if you turn on your high layer here to see, you can see this is now the change. This is now what I've fixed. If you turn your frequency separation on and off, it completely goes transparent because you don't have anything on. Make sure your background layer at the very bottom is turned on. So then you can do a before and after. And you can see it has replaced it with the perfect texture in here. You cannot do this with just a single pixel layer using the healing brush tool or the clone stamp tool, either one. It will never in a million years look this good. Questions about this?
You're right-handed, so I don't know if this is an issue, but when you're using the tablet and you need to like hit the Option key, how do you like?
Just
Well, they're both on the
move your
same
hand over to where the
side.
Option key is.
Yes, but like, never mind.
Oh, no, wait. You can set the front rocker switch of your stylus to be the Option key. Right? If you want to change this, go up to your Apple menu, down to System Settings, all the way down to Wacom Tablet. In the Wacom Tablet, you are now going to click on the pen. And on the pen, the front button right now is set to scroll. Click on this drop down, and you can come down and say, I want this to be... Shoot, that doesn't give me Option key. That's bizarre. Let's see what the back one gives you. Wow. That, in my opinion, is a serious flaw. Sorry, Eli, I thought that would help, but not an option. Option's not an option. All right. So then, some of you were trying to fix again these eyebrow, the errant eyebrow parts. Again, that is back up in the high layer. So again, I'm going to simply click on it, and you can see it right now. Hit the S key to go back to your clone stamp tool. Hold down the Option key, and you'll see I'm not working on that layer. So make sure that you've got that layer is active. And then simply pop through here, and you can get rid of all of those guys right here. And then again, if you turn on your low layer, you can see that this is not only gone, but again, I would argue that there is still a little bit of a red stain underneath all of this. So that is low layer here, and you can still see exactly where that was. So if I want to fix this part right here, so again, I got rid of the eyebrow of the hairs, but there's still this redness that sits underneath them. So to fix that, I'm going to go to a regular brush, the B key, make sure that you've got the low layer selected and active. So with the B key, you're going to click on this drop-down menu, and you're going to make it a completely soft brush. You're going to leave it as a normal brush, 100% opacity, but you're going to bring your flow down to like 1 or 2%. And then come over here onto your image, make your brush smaller so it's about the size that you can work with this on. Hold down your Option key and click on lighter skin tone. That will actually set your foreground color to be lighter. And then you just scrub through this to actually eliminate that part, to get it to balance the outside. And now if we take a look at it, that guy is completely gone. This is what my frequency separation group looks like.
What was the hardness of the brush?
Completely soft. And you can see There's no way you can do this with the healing brush tool. If you tried to do that on a pixel layer, it would suck in the tone of the other hairs that are around there. It wouldn't work for you at all. So then coming down really fast, we're not going to spend a ton of time here. I am going to go through this part of her face. So it's the upper lip where all the hairs are right here. There are parts of her skin here that I do want to clean up. Again, I want to make sure that I'm using the right focus in this. And so when you look at this, most of you would shy away from using the part of her cheek that's actually got the makeup on, that's over here to the side, to actually replace this. That is misleading. The color and tone are misleading you, making you think that this is not the same. So if you hold down your Option key and click on the eyeball for just the tone and the high copy, the tone and texture, you can see there's really good texture right here that I can use in this space over in here. I don't want to use the stuff that's in the middle right here because it's got all of those striation lines, the laugh lines, all of those are in here. If I take those and bring them over here to the hair, then I'm just doubling my problem up. So instead, I'm going to hit the S key to go with the clone stamp tool. I'm going to sample something that's way over to the side. This is in that whole area that was really rougey and dark and all of that. It's got the right texture, it just doesn't have the right tone and color. So, but this tells me that because I'm not confused by looking at the tone and color. And then I'm going to simply come over here and actually just get rid of all of this part. I can also at the same time get rid of, I'm going to resample a different place. Don't always stick at the same place where you sample from. I'm just getting rid of all of those laugh lines. And just to make sure that that part's actually working for me. So those parts are gone. I'm feeling good about that. I'm going to do just a little bit more on this line right up in here. And then I'm going to turn on my color, my low layer here, and you can see I've got a dark stain that's running right along here, along the lower part of her lip where all of those hairs were. I've also still got a little bit of laugh line tone that's in here, but if I hold down my Option key and just click on that layer, this is the problem that I need to fix. So again, I'm going to do the same thing with just a regular brush. The B key to get a regular brush. Make sure you select your low layer and you're on it. I'm going to sample an area of skin that's lighter so that I can use that to actually get rid of all of these darker areas that are actually in here. Now, when I do the darker areas like that, take a look at my screen. You can actually see the painting lines that I've done on that. So that's not going to work for me. So I'm going to undo all of those. Instead of that, to get rid of these, I'm going to use the mixer brush. It's the last thing that we need to set up. To get to the mixer brush, you come over to your brush menu, click on the drop-down menu, come down to mixer brush. In your mixer brush, again, it is a brush, so start at the very top. We're going to set the hardness to 0. We are going to then look at the very top. There is a box up in here. You can ignore the little folder thing. That's just preset brushes. But the thing that's right next to it to the right is the preview of the brush color that you've got, the paint color that you've got. You want that to be transparent. To make sure it is transparent, if you look right to the right of that, there are 2 areas they call buttons. The first one you do, so if a button is pushed in, it's got a black background like this one. If it's not pushed in, it's got a gray background that matches everything else. You want to make sure that the first one to the right is not pushed in, but that the one next to it is. And if you do that correctly, then you should see a transparent checkerboard here in your ink load. Does everybody have this part? Are we good? Okay, continuing over. You want a wetness of 20%, a load of 100%, a mix of 100%, and a flow between 20 and 40. I'm going to keep mine down around 20 right now. Click on your low layer because that's where this work is. Make your brush a little bit smaller. And then what you want to do is you want to click from good area and drag it onto bad area. So that's what I'm seeing right in here. I've got this one laugh line right here I want to get rid of. So I'm just going to start to click and drag across this until I get that and that color lifted. You can also come in from the other side. You can come from the bottom up. You're just blurring these colors is basically what you're doing. So I'm going after other little parts that are in here as well. And that gives me enough to actually start to really go after this area that's on her lip. So for her lip, I'm gonna just start pulling color down into her lip. If it's not going fast enough for you, go ahead and push your flow up. I'm gonna bring mine up to a 40%. And now I can actually bring it in a little bit more. You don't want to completely eliminate that part, but you do want to smooth it out. I'm going to kick this part out over here a little bit more. And then again, I'm going to go after this to give me a little bit more control. Now because I've smoothed it out, I can go back to a regular brush. So I'm going to go back to my regular brush tool, sample another color, make my brush a little bit larger, sample again another color of skin tone, option, click, and then just sort of work my way to open this up. Sample another color of, whoops. Turn on your high layer, and now we can see the difference in what we've actually done here. With my background turned on, I'm going to turn my frequency separation on and off. Is this making sense, everyone? Yes.
So, like, let's say we're doing like a beauty shoot and how we talked about packing those like masking items. When they're that close, like let's say like again with the lips, if we're working on something, will we possibly want to put an edge like on that lip?
You could make a selection to protect the lip, but I would soften that edge just a little bit because otherwise you'll see that really super hard line. Okay, one last thing to look at here really quickly because this is what really comes down to the best thing about the mixer brush. If you look at this area where the rouge was put on, you can see that there's a white line here with no makeup on it. There is something that is underneath her eye that does have makeup on it, but then there's this whole hard shape right here. You want to soften all of those things up, and the mixer brush is perfect for that. So I've still got the mixer brush selected. I'm going to do this and watch my entire image at the same time. I'm going to make my brush a little bit larger. Again, I'm going to make my mixer brush, because that was my regular brush, my mixer brush a little bit larger. And then I'm just going to start dragging in here just to soften that line up. That's all it took. And then I can bring this up a little bit into here. I can bring this up a little bit into here to get rid of that red line, that white line that's in here. That's all gone now. I can soften this up just a couple of strokes. I want to lift the area that's underneath her eye a little bit. It's still too red and too strong. So I'm going to go back to my regular brush. I'm going to sample an area of light skin that's underneath here. And again, with a really low flow, I can just start scrubbing in here. And this is now my retouch right here. Look at the difference. This is monumental, and it didn't take that much. I still feel like the area here of her, where the rouge is on the cheek here, is a little bit too dark. It's a little bit too deep. So I'm going to drop my flow all the way down to 1. I'm going to pick a color, not a really light skin color because that'll happen too quickly, but something that's right in this area that's underneath it a little bit. And I'm just going to run it across here a little bit just to soften that edge up. I've still got a problem with this spot that's on her face right here, a couple of these spots. Largely, they are probably up in my texture layer, so I'm going to hold down my Option key and click up here to actually fix this part, and yep, it's actually sitting up here and blah, blah, blah. You're off to the races. Is this making sense to everyone? Okay, really quickly, the two other challenges that we had here were the mouth and the hair. So I'm going to turn on my frequency group again. I'm going to collapse it. I'm going to turn on my bottom black layer, the back layer right here. So I want to fix the hair, which is actually a pixel move. Likely I would have done that first, although a lot of times I will do my retouching first and then I'll do big moves like fixing the hair after the fact. So to do that, you want to make sure that you've selected your frequency separation group right here. You're going to then hold down the Command, Option, Shift, and the letter E. Again, Command, Option, Shift, and the letter E. It makes a merge stamp version of everything that was visible and puts it up on top of my frequency separation layer. And then I'm going to select a big hunk of hair. So I'm going to hit the L key to get the lasso tool. I'm going to start up here. You can see where I am. I'm well over half of her hair. I'm going to click and drag I'm going to click and drag this down through her top of her forehead and then out the other side, and then grab all of the rest of the hair. A lot of you guys were fixing the hair patch here by simply trying to put in really small, just small areas of new hair right here. The problem is that your new hair crashes right into the old hair and it does not line up. And if anybody takes 5 seconds to look at it, they can see that you've done exactly what you've done. In our case, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to jump this now to its own layer, Command J. This layer now that we have built, the merge stamp version layer that we built, you can throw that away. It's done its job. We do not need it. I just wanted to make sure I had everything that I had. If I'd done some retouching on her forehead or some retouching in the hair, I would want to make sure that that was all a part of it. I'm going to just transform this thing right now, Command T. With transform Command T on it, I'm just going to grab the lower left-hand corner, and I'm simply going to click and drag the hair down to the point where I feel like this is actually going to cover the space that I want it to be covered. And then I'm going to simply hit OK. I'm going to put a black layer mask on this right now. Hold down your Option key and click on Add Layer Mask. It puts on a black one. Hit the B key now to get a regular brush. Make sure that it is not a mixer brush, but it is a regular brush. Make sure that the blending mode of this is, the hardness of that is 0. Normal blending mode, 100% opacity, and 100% flow. And then I'm going to use white as my foreground color to reveal that new hair that I just have masked out. So I'm going to make my brush a little bit larger, and I'm going to simply click and drag through here to put the rest of that hair in. Now this gives me a really good line here at the bottom, but I've got new hair that's crashing into old hair right here. So this fixes the bald spot. But look what is happening here. If I change this, you can see this. Look at the edge where this actually lapses into the other. So you don't even need to watch this when this happens. If you hold down your Option key and click on the layer mask, this is the problem. This is the edge I'm crashing into. So I'm simply going to pull all of this out so that I take all of my new hair and I go all the way from her forehead fix all the way to the edge of my image. So I can't have new and old textures mixing because I have completely replaced all of the texture of that whole area using new hair. And so this is what it ends up looking like. And I don't have any trouble matching them up because it's all the same hair, but it fixes my problem. Make sense? Okay, then the final thing is the mouth. So if we double click on the hand, so there's a gazillion ways about going after this, but the real issue that you need to realize that's happening in here, the problem that I'm having in here, hang on just one second. Yeah. The problem I'm having in here, why are her teeth crossed? Because I deserved that. Why do her teeth appear to be crossed? Exactly. It's the fact that this tooth right here is casting a shadow on the one that's right next to it. The only way that could happen would be if they were crossed. If they were exactly the same level, they would be the exact same tone, and it would not appear to be crossed. So one of your jobs that you could have done is that you could take this tooth right here and you could make it the same gray as this one, or you can take this tooth right here and you could make it the same lightness as this one. You simply have to match them, right? This is a lot of work. So for me, I would rather cheat. That's what I have to have tattooed on my ass. I've been looking for something to get tattooed for like 30 years, right? And I keep, I've tried like really like noble phrases and all that kind of, and or I've tried really wrong things to have tattooed, all that, anyway, it's just this ongoing battle, and anyway. Anyway, so if you go to look, so go back to our session 7 folder, the assignment folder that was in for session 7. You will actually see that inside of there's a folder called New Mouths. If you click on that, you will open it up. There's just a whole collection of mouths that I pulled off the internet. So I'm going to start to work my way down, and what I'm looking for is something that is similar to what I've got going on here. But this is the trick. Like if you take a look at this mouth right here, her head is tilted back, and that's not the way my is on the one is on that I'm trying to fix right here. So those sorts of things matter. I can rotate this. It's not the fact that it's on an angle. That's not my problem. It's the fact that her chin is actually lifted up, and the girl that I'm trying to fix it on is not. So I don't think this is a really good selection here. Mouth is too closed, although that was another option. I've actually gone in and retouched this and closed her mouth. That's another thing to fix the teeth. Hide them. So anyway, I'm going to work my way down. This may be the one that I end up using, but I've got another copy of it further down. So if we keep going down, eventually you should find one that's called, it's this one right here. So it's untitled copy. Can everybody find this one? I just want you to do this with me. It'll go really fast and you will be shocked. Did everybody find this one? Okay, go ahead and open this up into Photoshop. And then simply grab the layer of this, drag it onto the image that we are trying to fix, hold down your Shift key and let go. You'll get a warning about a color mismatch. Don't worry about that part. Go ahead and pull this in. Now in my case, it brought it into the frequency separation group. I don't want it in there, so I'm going to click on mine and drag it just out of the frequency separation group so that I'm not getting confused in there. I'm going to double click on the hand to actually see about where this is. So then I'm just going to roughly move this thing into place. So I'm going to do this using the transform tool because I also want to rotate it a little bit. Command T to bring up the transform dialog box. Rotate it slightly and pull it down so it's just roughly in the area. Don't worry, we'll get much more specific in just a second. And then go ahead and click your check mark and say OK. And then turn it off so that you can't, turn the mouth off so that, because we need to make a selection of her mouth. Zoom into her mouth. You need to select the background layer now because, again, I need to be on the layer that actually has the pixel content that I'm trying to select. So if, for instance, we were still up on the hair layer and you were trying to select the mouth, you would never select, it can't find the mouth because it's not on the layer that you're on. So make sure you select the background layer. We are going to use the quick selection tool to do it. So if you go over the 4th tool down, click on the drop-down menu and come down to quick selection. We've used this tool a million times. So simply, again, you do not want it to touch the edge that you want it to find. So I'm going to start to click right here in the middle of her mouth, and I'm just going to work my way over and then work my way down. And then you'll see what ends up happening is that there are these corners of her mouth that I can't get. So even though I told you not to cross those lines, this is the trick. You do want to cross those lines. So I'm going to click and continue to drag this all the way down, which selects part of her lips. But now I can go in and get rid of those selections. So if you hold down your Option key, you get the little minus sign in your quick selection tool and simply drag across the bottom to get rid of that part. You can do single little taps. That will also work. And then up in the top, a single little tap. That works. I've got lip that's selected up here that I want to unselect. So that works. I'm missing lip over here. I haven't gotten the teeth over here, so I got to make sure I got all of that. And then again, minus to clean that up. And then finally, this corner over here, you want to go ahead and select it out. And then minus to clean that up. And then one small hit right there. So this is a really good selection of her mouth. However, if I use this as my layer mask, it's going to look cut out. It's just like a perfect pen tool selection. So I want to soften this a little bit. To do that, come up to the Select menu, down to Modify, down to Feather, and put in a single pixel for your feathering, and say OK. So this is now the mask that I'm actually going to use. So I'm going to come back up to my teeth layer. I'm going to click on it to make it visible. And you can see it's way off of proportion. It doesn't matter. The mask is in the right spot. So I'm going to go ahead and add this as a layer mask. So now it is a layer mask. So the mask is in the right spot. The teeth are not. So if you click on the chain link that's right between the two, to break it, you can then move I don't want to move the mask. I just want to move the teeth. So select the teeth, and then again, I'm going to transform this because you can try moving it, but if you need to do any rotation, it's just easier to do it with transform. So Command T will actually do the transform, and I'm going to move this up, and then I'm going to zoom back out to get a slight rotation in it and kick it up a little bit more. And that's actually looking pretty good to me. If her teeth were too big, I would actually click on the chain link between the width and the height in the very top, and then hover the scrubby slider. I would hover over the H and make it a little bit smaller or a little bit larger. So it's pretty close though, so I think we can pretty much leave that where it is right now. So I'm going to hit the check mark to say okay. I'm going to hit the V key just to raise this up a little bit and just see how far. If you find that your image just starts to snap to something and it wants to go too high and you want to really restrict the movement, use your arrow keys to just tap up. It'll go up a single pixel at a time. And so I'm feeling like this part is actually pretty good in terms of getting it into her mouth, but I have two problems in here. One is her teeth are just way too white. So to fix that, I'm actually going to put a curve on top of this to make them darker. So with your layer mask selected, I'm going to click on Add a Curve, just a regular curve on this. However, if I move my curve right now, it affects my entire image. I don't want that to be happening. I just want to affect the teeth. So I want to clip this curve to the teeth so that it only impacts the teeth. Hold down, hover your cursor between the curve and the new teeth. Hold down your Option key, click, it will clip it down, and then you can simply click and drag the center line of this down until it actually makes you feel like those are real teeth in her mouth. And at that stage of the game, that looks pretty fucking awesome. If I come in here and click on this just a little bit, you'll also actually see what I'm missing in here is that it looks a little bit of the illusion because I've got a darker part of her lip right here. But in theory, I really should have a shadow coming from her lip onto her teeth. So I'm going to add one more curve on top of this. I'm also going to clip it down to the bottom so that it's impacting only the figure on the bottom. If you change the blending mode of your curve now from normal to multiply, it will make her mouth really, really dark here. I'm just looking for an edge up at the very top to be dark. So I'm going to invert my mask. So this is the mask that is controlling that extra darkness. I'm going to Command I to invert it. Then I'm going to grab a brush, make it much smaller. I'm going to make it medium hard. I'm also going to drop my flow way down. And then white is my foreground color. And all I'm going to do, again, I don't need to worry about the upper part of her lip. That's protected by the mask. But I can simply run this across the top to build in a bit of shadow that runs across the top. So this is what mine now looks like. And you can see that small bit of shadow puts her teeth into her mouth. And that's how you do it.
That was so simple.
I know.
I feel like I would go in and try to like dodge and burn it.
Question with replacing mouths, because I did try to replace her whole mouth with different lips.
That's a real hard thing to do.
Okay, because I tried selecting the mouth and then doing like content or fill.
No, but okay, but you bring up a great point. You bring up a great point, and the point is this, is that don't fix anything that doesn't need it. That's where you start to get into trouble. That's why when I talk about removing spill from hair, and people get really wild with it, and they just go wild, and then they end up, they end up changing the color of hair that didn't have spill in it. that's when you start getting into trouble, is that you're starting to make changes to things that never needed to be changed. The lips didn't need to be changed. It was just the teeth. Okay, guys. I've got 309. Let's call that 310. I'm going to be generous. Let me make a hard 10, be back at 320. We're going to get into doing compositing now. I need everybody like really awake. So go get the coffee, the Coke, I don't know, back in my day, it involved a whole lot of illegal shit, but I'm not going to go down that road.
My hard drive is like.
Okay, so to start off with, I have two things that I want to composite together. I'm just going to throw something out roughly. I've got a background and I've got something that I shoot in the studio, and I want to put those two things together. And I want them to be a believable composite. So there's a number of things that have to match. Like what? Shadows have to match, which would, from my perspective, I would call it lighting direction, right? So lighting direction is one of the things. What else?
Scale.
Scale, huge. What else? Tone and color. I'm just going to call it color, because tone and color are two different things, right? So color would be one thing, certainly has to match. Tone, I'm going to call that exposure and contrast, because that's really what we're talking about in tone, right? Because those things would be different, right? So what else? Again, you need to think about all the things that happen in a camera.
Positioning or blocking, you could say.
Blocking. That's an interesting one. I haven't really thought about it. Can you be more explicit? Give me an example.
Like the way someone's like positioned or placed just in the photo.
Okay, that might be where we're heading. So once I get into it, you tell me if it's the same as blocking. I always think about blocking as how you establish like spots on a stage where people have to be standing at a certain point. That kind of. I mean, that's what I think about. Okay, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to give you my list. You should write this down. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait for everyone to get a piece of paper or your phone or whatever, because these are the things that you have got to keep in mind to do successful compositing. So this is my list. It starts off with lighting direction, exposure, contrast, color, saturation, shadows, scale, resolution. Now, when we're talking about resolution here, we're talking about matching resolutions. So for instance, one of the biggest problems that we run into with AI right now is that you've got full res images, so something along the order of 22 megapixel file, and then you're adding a 1 megapixel artificial intelligent object or something into it, and the resolution is a complete mismatch. So again, that resolution, depth of field, focus, huge. And then finally, perspective. And perspective is the one that catches everybody. So I'm just gonna, so again, from the top again, it is lighting direction, exposure, contrast, color, saturation, shadows, scale, resolution, depth of field, and perspective. So, perspective is the hard one. It's the hard one to get your head around. So that's where we're going to actually start with today and talk about perspective. Because if you don't have it right, it'll inevitably look bad. So this is the way I always think about it when we talk about so what I'm just going to throw out here. When you're looking at a composite that's been put together, a lot of the things like lighting direction, if there's a mismatch in lighting direction, it's a glaring mistake, and you'll spot it a mile away. I mean, if you've got the background light is going left to right and the figure it's going right to left, I mean, it just, you can't escape it. It's just bad, it's off, it's easy to spot. However, if you're looking at a composite, even if you don't know it's a composite, but you're looking at it and you say to yourself, there's something that just is not right here about. I don't know what it is, but there's something here that's just not right. This does not look believable to me. That's just something that's not here. 9,999 times out of 10,000, it's perspective. The perspective is off. So we have to have a real understanding of what perspective is. And so that's where we're going to go with this right now. So again, this isn't something that as photographers you really have to deal with when you're just shooting a picture, because it's all built in. It's what happens in real nature and with your camera. But when you start putting pieces together, you run the risk of violating that inherent, laws of space. And if you do that, again, people will look at your stuff and say, well, there's something wrong in here. I can't put my finger on it, and then you'll say to yourself, oh yeah, I remember Verser told me that was going to be perspective. So we are going to look at perspective in pretty in depth right now, and then we are going to actually do largely a composite from the beginning to end. Okay. So to do that, I need everybody, please do this with me. It's a working file that I want you to open up because I want you to experience this stuff. We're going to get into how to scale in perspective here during this, so please don't just sit there and watch this part. It's tough enough as it is. Would it be easier if we pulled a table over for you to sit on? Like one of those that doesn't have electric stuff on it? Better? Okay, so I need everybody to go to your session 9 folder. And inside session 9 in your student folder, there's actually a folder called Perspective. And if you open that up, inside Perspective at the very top, there's a file called 01-01-perspective.psd, if you could open that up into Photoshop. And I'm going to get rid of all this other stuff. Okay. So if you double click on the hand, so this is a working file from a guy by the name of Jesus Ramirez. He's if you follow any people who do Photoshop stuff on YouTube, there's really only 3 people in my opinion that are worth actually looking at, and Jesus Ramirez is one of them. He's the guy who runs they call it PTC. It stands for the Photoshop Training Channel. But he's really, really, really brilliant guy. He knows his stuff really well. So anyway, I will talk about the other 2 later because I've got examples of stuff from the other 2. So I just try to give credit where credit is due. This is actually, Jesus Ramirez did like a workshop that I bought into and watched, all about dealing with perspective. So this is his file. All of these are his files right here. He was really into, and I think still is, into doing a lot of 3D design. So everything that you see on here, with a couple of exceptions, a lot of this is just spaces that he has created, 3D spaces that he's actually created. But he's an amazing talent. Again, you should subscribe to his channel. You should follow him. I give a shout out to people whose work I actually use in this class. And this is my shout out to Jesus because he's remarkable stuff. He's definitely somebody that is worth. Again, he's not somebody who's going to show you how to do, pinch noses and faces and make people look like balloon cartoon animals. That's not who he is. It's really more industrial grade strength Photoshop stuff. So at any rate, we're going to start with this. So this thing that we're looking at right here is, again, it's an illusion of a 3-dimensional space. So if you take a look at the checkerboard thing that's on, or the graph paper looking thing that's on the floor, that would be a ground plane. You can ignore the red line that's going across and the blue one as well. And then you see a horizon line in the background, and then there's sky above it. So that's basically roughly the illustration that we're looking at, the illusion. So if you look over on the layers palette, you will see that there's a series of color-coded layer groups. We are going to start with the red one and work our way down. So if you click on the eyeball for the red group and then click it to open it up. You will see not only when you open it up, there are subfolders in here. We're going to go through this slowly. If you get lost, please stop me because it's really easy to get caught back up. Again, I've got the exact same file that you guys have, so I don't want you to just sit there. I want you to experience this so that you really understand this part. So if you look down inside the diagram group, once you open it up, you will see that there is a subgroup in here called 1-point perspective. If you can turn the eyeball on for that, it should show you 3 cubes that come up into place on this image. So does everybody have the 3 cubes? Okay. So to decide or to figure out whether these things are in perspective, you need to scroll down in the red group, and what you're looking for is a subfolder called Vanishing Point. You need to actually click on that eyeball as well. And what you will see when you do that, if you zoom in on this, is there are a set of what we call converging lines. What a converging line is, if we take a look at this one cube that's on the, I'm just going to pick, it doesn't matter which one you pick, they're all doing the same thing. This cube that's on the left-hand side right here, if you were to lay a ruler along this back edge right here, and you were to then draw a line along this ruler all the way across the entire image, and then you were to do the same thing along this line right here, the one that's on the right edge, and also on the lower edge right here, all 3 of those lines would crash into one place. These are called converging lines. They all coalesce. They all meet at one single point, and that point is called the vanishing point. And the vanishing point has got 2 incredibly important properties if this is in perspective. If it is in perspective, your converging lines, no matter what you've got, all of the elements in your image, all of the converging lines will land at a vanishing point, and that vanishing point will always be on the horizon. So those are really, really, really critical elements for us for everything we do moving forward in perspective. If you look at the other box that's on the side over here, you'll see that the converging lines are doing the exact same thing. And if you look at the box on the very top, it's doing the exact same thing here. This is called single point perspective. So what we're seeing here is we've basically got a single face that we're actually dropping back into here with these converging lines. Now, if you zip back out a little bit, come up higher in your layer stack here, there is a subgroup called Free Cube. If you can click on Free Cube, you will actually see it adds another cube that's pretty much further over to the right. It also has vanishing point lines on it. So if you look at the group that's actually open, click on the eyeball for the vanishing point, you can see that it too has a series of converging lines. And those 2 actually converge to a single point, that is a vanishing point, that is also on the horizon line. But you'll notice that it does not have to be the same single vanishing point. So just because you have a 1-point perspective does not mean that your vanishing points all fall in one single spot. They do not. But what they do is that they all fall on the horizon line, if this is in perspective. So watch what happens if you turn off the vanishing point for that free cube right now. Sorry, not the cube, but the vanishing point lines. If you turn those off, click on the free cube group, hit the V key to get the move tool, and simply move the box straight up until it's up in the air up in here. You can see that something does not look right. And what does not look right is because this is no longer in perspective. If you were to turn on the vanishing point lines, you'll see they fall somewhere out in space, but they do not land on the horizon line. So again, this is the thing. People do this shit all the time and think, well, yeah, it looks great. It's fine. This is my composite. It looks beautiful. And the reason it does not work is because this free cube that we just moved is out of perspective. If you then take the free cube group, again, hit the V key to get the move tool and drag it back down into place where the vanishing point lands on the horizon line, then you'll see it seems like it belongs in space. It is grounded on the plane and it is in space because it is in perspective. So, I know that's a lot. Hang on. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, because if he wanted it on the same line and brought it up, he would have to like flip the
There's
block.
all sorts of things that would have to change. So hold that thought, because we're gonna get to all of them. Okay. So you can come up now and turn off the eyeball for the 1-point perspective. We're still going to work in the diagram group, so still leave the parent that says diagrams on, but just go ahead and turn off one perspective, and then you can collapse the whole thing. There's also a group in here called 2-point perspective. If you turn on that eyeball and open it up, this is a 2-point perspective, and what the way I try to get people to understand how this works in like real life. If you imagine this cube that's right here in the middle, imagine this is a storefront, and that when you are looking at sort of like the storefront, and you can see the front of the store, but then you can also see the side of the store. I mean, these situations exist in the real world. Is all I'm trying to say is that this will be in the real world, right? If you open it up in its group and click on its vanishing point lines, you will see that you actually have 2 planes that actually have converging lines on it, and they do both all converge to single vanishing points. But yet, because we have a 2-point perspective here, you have 2 sets that still both have to land on the horizon line. The horizon line and the vanishing point here is the key word in all of this. Vanishing points only happen on horizon lines, and if you do have converging lines, which is anything that's got straight lines built into them, whatever, they will always land on those vanishing points will always land on the horizon line. So you can actually turn that off, the 2-point perspective eyeball, and collapse it. There is a 3-point perspective if you click on this and open it up. So if a lot of people look at this and go, well, what the fuck is that? So sort of just imagine there's a cube floating in the middle of the air, right? Just work with me on this one. I'm going to show you a situation where this would be more likely to be seen, but nonetheless, if you click on its vanishing point lines, what you'll see happens is this. You still have the 2-point perspectives that will generate vanishing point. Converging lines will actually generate vanishing points that are on the horizon, but then you'll have a third one that simply goes off into space. And so it does not land on a horizon, yet it is still a vanishing point. However, this thing is in perspective. However, if you click on this whole vanishing point group, I want to flip this 180 degrees. So make sure that you've got the vanishing point group is selected. And yes.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, but how we worked it and like if it's the same thing and like figure drawing class is based on the perspective, the amount is going to be the dimension. So how many dimensions that you're doing is going to be the amount of like perspective points, correct?
So wait, I got it all up into where you threw in dimensions. So what do you mean by dimensions?
Based on like 1 point, of course, is typically a flat like 1 dimension, so 1 viewpoint, and then the more that you add is how many different perspectives there's going to be. So how we had the 1 is going straight to 1 point,
Right.
and 2 2-dimensional straight to those, and now we're at 3. So
Right, but you'll notice that our interaction with this space has not changed at all. It's simply how many faces that the object itself has and its orientation. Okay, so make sure that you've got the 3-point perspective group selected, the whole group, the parent group of it, and then come up to the edit menu, down to transform, and then you are going to flip this vertically. And what you'll see now is, this is the reason I go back to all of this, is that imagine you're in a helicopter and you are flying over the top of a building. You would actually see this. Now, the sky has become the ground plane. The ground plane has become the sky. We still have a horizon line that separates them, but this is a way that more people would experience what generates a 3-point perspective than not. Does that make sense, everyone? So imagine we're looking at the rooftop of a building. You would still have the 2 planes on the sides would actually generate a 2-point perspective set of lines with 2 vanishing points on the horizon, and then you've just got another one that goes down into the ground that doesn't land on the horizon at all. But these things do exist. This is not some weird theoretical model. These things really do exist in real time and space, and stuff that you would actually photograph. Are we good about this part? All right, hit Command Z to unrotate that. You can turn off the 3-point perspective. So this is where it starts to get more practical. If you turn on the eyeball for the top to bottom boxes, you can actually see these are all in perspective. If we added vanishing line, I don't think these have vanishing lines, but we can see. Go ahead and open up the top to bottom group. No, I don't. Well, you can open up boxes as well. I don't think it has vanishing point in here. No, it doesn't have vanishing point in here, so it doesn't matter. These are all in. They are all in perspective. So, but what you notice about this is that the box that's on the very bottom, you can actually see part of the top of the box, but you see absolutely none of the bottom. And then as you start to get up closer to the horizon line, you start to see less of the top. You still don't see any of the bottom here. When you get up to this one, the third one from the bottom up, you can actually see very little of the top of the box, but you can't see any of the bottom. But the minute you cross the horizon line, you no longer can see any of the top of the box, but you do start to see the bottom of the box. And then the higher it goes above the horizon line, the more of the bottom that you see. Once you get above the horizon line, you will never see any of the top of the box again. But as it goes higher and higher and higher, you actually see more and more and more of the bottom of the box. Does that make sense to everyone? Good on this part? There's another last thing in here. It's a layer called car. If you click on the car and take a look at it, this is my composite. Is this okay? What's wrong with it?
You said called car?
I'm sorry, what? If it was this high in space, I would definitely be seeing the bottom of it, and I can't see the bottom of it. Can I see part of the top of it? A small amount, right? The reason what is wrong with this composite is the car is out of perspective. This would never be able to happen. This breaks every law that you guys, whether you know these laws or not, this is the visual world that we've grown up in. And you look at this and you go, well, I may not be able to articulate that this is a perspective problem, but I know that looks horrible. That's wrong, right? So where does the car belong? Well, based on what I can see, if again, select the car, select the layer, hit the V key that you can move it, I can barely see a little bit of the top of this car. That means that has got to be below the horizon line. So I'm just going to click and drag this down till it barely gets below the horizon line and let go. And does this now look like a much more believable comp? Yes, because the car is now in perspective. And again, when you guys have been doing a lot of the perspective work that I see students actually doing, you run into these problems all the time. And it's just like, and again, it's just being made aware of this. And people are like, oh my God, yes, of course. Now, so there are a lot of clues that your subject matter can actually give you about where it is supposed to be in space. Does that make sense? Okay. You can turn off the eyeball for the entire red group. You guys okay over there? What do you need? Oh, I pulled it out. I was there right here.
I was like,
They're
oh, start
on the
talking.
desktop.
Have you got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just week 9 though.
Yeah. That's all she needs.
And then can you just eject that one?
Okay. I'm gonna wait till you get that file open.
In film, we have camera reports or logs, I should say. And if you ever have reshoots, you have to fill out the log, which consists of the camera height.
Oh yeah.
The angle which it's tilted down, the sensor and everything.
Oh, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Which
there's
reminds me of this.
Yeah, there's a student that I had in this class who I know I showed you. It was a picture of a guy in an ambulance with a bunch of the paramedics in, and it was all composited. And his lighting diagram or his not just his lighting diagram, his camera diagram. I mean, everything. It was not only the height of the camera, it was the angle, it was the focal length of the lens, it was again, things like f-stops. If you shift your depth of field and those don't matter. I mean, it was like everything.
Yeah.
And his comps were flawless. I mean, they were just flawless. Anyway, all right. So you can turn off diagrams, the red one, and go to the next one, the green one. That's the green layer group that says people, and click on that and open this up. So again, this is one of Jesus Ramirez's, it's just a figure that he has generated in this. And the thing that I want you to know about this guy is in perspective, but what I want you to notice is where the horizon line bisects him. It's running right kind of through halfway between the top of his shoulder and his elbow. If you scroll down to the bottom of the people group, that's where all the men are, down at the very bottom. So the only one that's turned on right now is man number 1. If you click on man number 2, you will see that this person is further back in space. It's further away from the camera. It's a clone of this guy. So they're the exact same size. They're wearing the exact same clothes, blah, 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 blah. But what you'll notice is that as he goes back into space, that line, the horizon line, bisects him in exactly the same spot, no matter how far he is from the camera. That will always bisect him in exactly the same spot. So if you click on man number 3, you'll see that it's a person way the fuck back in the background. But again, that horizon line will never change where it is relative to him. His head will never go below the horizon line as long as he is standing up and walking like these other people are right here. This is another thing that people fuck up all the time, is that they feel like, well, the further back in space, of course, at some point the horizon line is going to be above him. No, it will never be. It doesn't matter how far you push him back. If he is in perspective, that will not change. If you then go up, we're just working our way up one layer at a time to squat 1. Now, in this case, it's the same guy, but what you can see here is that he is not being bisected. The horizon line is not going through halfway between his shoulder and his elbow. Why not? Exactly. This guy's 3 feet tall now, not 6 feet tall. So because his height has changed. However, if you click on squat 2, the relationship of space above him to the horizon line remains consistent throughout the entire thing, no matter how far back in space that he actually goes. And you can go up to hit squat number 3, and you'll see really far away from the camera, much smaller, but again, the relative space above him remains consistent no matter where he is in this image. Is that making sense to everyone? Okay, you can turn off all the squat guys. You can turn off everything except for the one guy in the front. And then we're going to continue to work our way up. There's a next file up above squat 3 is woman 1. If you click on that. So you can see in her case, she is on the same plane as the guy. She's as close to the camera as the guy is. However, the line is bisecting her through basically the top of her shoulders, not between her shoulder and her elbow. Why? Again, different height, right? However, if you click on woman number 2, no matter where she is in space, that line, the horizon line, bisects her always in the same spot. So up here in the front, it's at the top of her shoulders. When she's way further back in space, it is still the top of her shoulders. And then finally, if you go to the last one, woman on a box, in this case, she's actually further back in space than the woman here that's here in the front. However, now the horizon line is bisecting her right through where her top is actually meeting her pants. Why? Again, she's now standing on a 3-foot box. She's no longer a 5'10" woman. She is now a 10'10" woman because she's standing on a 5-foot box, right? Or 4-foot, whatever. You guys get where this is going, right? So, but if we were to use this, again, is no matter how far we would go back with her on that box, as long as we were actually scaling this in perspective, that would bisect them at the same place the whole time. Make sense? All right, so then you can turn off everybody except for the guy. Come back down and actually select the guy. So how do you transform in perspective? This is what big part of this whole exercise is about. So to transform in perspective, I'm going to show you the shortcut right now. We're going to hit Command T to transform him, and you will actually see we get the transform control handles and rectangle around this. You will also see that there's an anchor point in the middle. If you do not have this anchor point, you cannot transform in perspective. If you don't see it, you come up to the very top on the left-hand side. There's a little check mark, a place for a check mark up at the very top with, it looks like a sort of a set of little boxes around it with a little white thing in the middle. That indicates this is showing the anchor point or not. So if your anchor point isn't showing, click on that little box and it will. So to transform in perspective, what you have to do is you've got to put the anchor point on the horizon line. So if you click this anchor point and drag it, I'm just going to drag it over here to the right-hand side and drop it back on the horizon point like this. Then you hold down the Shift key and the Option key. Is everybody good? Hold down the Shift key and the Option key, and then I'm just going to click the lower left-hand corner of this guy, and I'm going to click and start to push back, and you will see he is getting smaller. He is going back in space, but look at where the horizon line is. It remains consistent on his body. It does not move at all. So this is how you would make him smaller and push him back in space. This is now being transformed in perspective. You can go the opposite direction. It isn't only about making people smaller. Keep pulling him forward. This is how you would bring him forward to your camera. Again, that horizon line has never changed. It is going through the exact same spot no matter where we are. If you do this, if you get them in perspective, you can keep them in perspective by leveraging this. Does this make sense to everyone? Is this working for everyone? All right, hit Command Z to undo that. If we move the anchor point over to the other side, to the left-hand side, now when you actually do the transform in perspective, he's going to follow the anchor point. He's going to head towards that. So again, this is how you would move him over to the side. So I'm going to move him over till his foot touches just that red line that's at the bottom, and I'm going to hit a check mark and say okay. Now he is in perspective. However, you say to me, well, Verser, I don't want to, I don't want to move him to the left-hand side, whatever. Once he is this distance from the camera, you just need to keep him this distance from the camera, but you can move him where you want to. So to move him, hit the V key to get the move tool, hold down the Shift key so that it restricts your movement to only going horizontal. So if you hold down the Shift key when you're using a movement tool, you restrict the movements to either vertical or horizontal. Some tools or some objects will actually go at 45-degree angles, but in this case, if you simply click on him and start to drag towards the right, holding down the Shift key, drag towards the right, he will stay on that line. So even though I'm pulling him all the way over here, he is still in perspective because that line is still bisecting him exactly where it was to begin with. However, I'm going to go back in history before I did the free transform to bring him back up here into the front. If you simply want to move him away from the camera, again, you do exactly what we've been doing. Hit Command T, simply put the anchor point on the horizon line right behind him. So I'm eyeballing this, but I know I'm pretty close. So the anchor point is right on his chest, but it is on the horizon line. And then again, hold down the Shift key and the Option key. I am not showing, never mind, because I've got my whole diagram thing is selected because I went back in history. Hang on one second. Let me just undo this. Select the guy, and then again, Command T. Anchor point right into the middle of his chest that is on the horizon line that is behind him. Hold down the Shift key and the Option key. Click on the left part and simply drag him back, and he goes back into space, but he is being transformed in perspective. Game changer, guys.
You said the Shift key?
The Shift key and the Option key. You can also pull him closer to the camera. Same thing. Yes?
Okay, so this is graphed perfectly, but how do you define horizon lines and images when it's not?
You're one step ahead of me. We're heading there right now. Okay, so we can get out of this. You can turn off the eyeball for the entire green group and collapse them.
When I hit Shift and Option, it just makes it smushed.
Shift Option. Hold on, Shift Option again. and he's in the right spot, and then just grab one of these lower handles.
Oh, it's the little one.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so you can turn off the people green group and then turn on the purple samples group. And this is exactly what I was talking about in looking at a composite. When you look at this, do you feel like this is right? No, there's something off in this, right? And it's, you look at it and you say, well, the lighting is basically the same, and and there's no real, we don't have a marker here that really gives us scale, so that's not really off, whatever, but it just doesn't look right, right? So the reason is, if you open up the samples group, so click on the drop-down menu to open this up, inside of there is a man group, click this to open that up. You will actually see that this is a real photograph of a guy, and he's simply been masked out. If you hold down your shift key and you click on the layer mask, you will turn it off. This is the real photograph of the guy. Can you tell where the horizon line of the guy is?
Yes.
Where? Just above his knees, right? Like right on the very top of his knee line. Just keep that in mind, because we're going to use this now for the next 3 or 4 images. So this is where the guy's horizon line is. If you hold down the shift key and click on that layer mask again to turn it back on, do you know where the horizon line of this scene is? There is a massive mismatch between horizon lines. If you want people in perspective, or anything in perspective, the horizon lines need to match. So we're going to make them match. We're not going to move the guy, we're actually going to move the beach. Click on the beach image, the beach layer, hit the V key to get the move tool, and simply click and drag it down until the horizon line of the beach is right above his knees. Is this a more believable comp now? Completely, right? It's because he is now in perspective. Again, there are other things that are mismatched here. The contrast and the color are somewhat mismatched. There's other issues that can be in here. But does this look better than it did before? Clearly, right? And again, if you turn off go back and turn off his, hold down your shift key and click on this to get rid of it, not looking that much different. I mean, I would say that the background in his real scene is brighter than the background that he's in right now. And so that might be the mismatch. But yeah, we're going to talk about all of that today. But does this make sense, everybody, about perspective? Okay, I want you to turn off the beach eyeball, and right underneath it, click on the sky. Is he in perspective?
Yes.
He is. How do you know? Exactly. So we are going to now transform him in perspective. So click on the guy layer, hit Command T. And the problem that I have right now with the Command T is that you can see that my control handles are right on the very edge of my image. So I want to be able to control them. So hit the circle with the slash through it to undo the transform. Hit the F key once to get to the pasteboard, and then Command T again. Now you can get to your control handles and control them. Nikayla, do you have a question? Okay. So I'm going to transform this in space. I'm actually going to simply put this down on the horizon line right between his legs. And then I'm going to transform him closer to the camera. So again, hold down the shift key and the option key, grab one of the corner points, and start to pull him back. How many of you people realized that as we pulled him back to the camera that you were going to lose his head? Most of you would have pulled him back and also pulled him down like this, and he is no longer in perspective. Look at how bad that looks compared to this, which is in perspective. And again, you simply know this intuitively. I am just trying to put a point on it so that when you do this work, you're understanding what it is you need to look for to actually have this match. Make sense? All right, Command Z to undo that. Click on the little circle with the slash through it. uncheck the sky scene and turn on the last one, the subway station scene. Is this guy in perspective? No. How do we even know where the horizon line of this scene is? It would be converging lines which land on a vanishing point, right? Let's temporarily turn the guy off. So turn the eyeball for the guy off. This is how, and it leaves his shadows under his feet. Don't worry about those. But this is how you determine horizon lines. So some people do this using just the regular shape tool. I don't. I use the pen tool to do this. So what we have on here, if you look at this image, do we have converging lines on here? We've got a ton of them. We've got the banister that's right here. We've got the fluorescent lights that are right here. We've got the yellow line that's down along here. We've got the top of the train. We've got the top of the roof line here. We've got the wire line that the train is going on. We've got the railroad tracks that are going. There's all sorts of converging lines in here. So to find this, hit the P key to get the pen tool. It's the easiest tool to use. I'm going to do my first converging line is going to be on the marble banister. I'm going to click on this and I'm going to kick out to the other side. And what you need to do is you need to move your line so that it does a perfect trace along this edge of the banister here. So just move it up and down so that you get the banister perfectly selected. And I'm going to click OK to that. And then I'm going to come over, I'm going to use the roof line to do another converging line. But you could use a gazillion, you could do the roof line. Let's do the roof line all the way on the other side. They all land in the same spot. So I'm going to go to the roof line on the other side, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag down. And again, make sure that you're tracking right along the edge of that roof line, and click, and where those two things crossed in the middle is the vanishing point. So you can then grab, come up to your ruler. If your rulers are not showing, click on your view menu, make sure that you've got rulers clicked and so that they do show. You can drag a guideline right down. It will actually snap to the converging lines. That is now the horizon line of the subway station. So I'm going to go to my path palette right now and throw that away. And you can see it's just so much easier than doing other layers that have shape lines in them and doing all that kind of stuff. Yes?
How did you drag that down again?
The guideline? Just come up, click on your ruler and drag. You pull down guidelines forever. And if you want to get rid of the guidelines, you either come up to the view menu, down to guides and hit clear guides. But if you do that, it gets rid of all of them. If you want to just get rid of one of them, hit the V key to get the move tool, hover over the guideline, and you will get a double-headed arrow, and you can click and drag it right back up on top of the ruler. All right, so now we know where the horizon line is of the station. So now you can go back to your layers palette and turn the guy back on, and you can see I've got a horrible mismatch here. For him to actually be in perspective, I'm going to move him now. So I'm clicking on the man layer, hit the V key to get the move tool, and I'm just going to push him up until that horizon line is right there. What is wrong with this picture? The guy is like 22, 25 feet tall now. That is a serious problem. And the reason this is happening is that because these two images have been shot radically out of perspective. So if you hold down, I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that to bring him back down. Hold down your Shift key again and click on the layer mask. Where's the camera?
Low.
Really low, right? It's probably even with his knees. So if you're looking at my knees right now, my knees are about 2.5, maybe not quite 3 feet above the ground. That's how low the camera is. But look at the camera on this subway station. Again, I'm going to just hold on the Shift key and get rid of that layer mask. If you take a look at the subway station right now, we're actually able to see quite a bit of the tops of parts of this. My guess is that there is either a staircase that the photographer's... Here, turn off the guy right now because it's just confusing with him. It's still visible. I would say that the guy or whoever is actually shooting this is probably at least 10, maybe 12 feet in the air. There's a 10-foot difference in the height of the camera when these two things were shot. So the perspective is off. It will never, ever, ever match. How do you fix this?
The perspective tool.
No, there is no way to fix this. The way you do fix this is that you either go and you reshoot the train station at the perspective of the guy at 3 feet off the ground, or you reshoot the guy, you go back and reshoot the guy, and you're shooting him 12 feet off the ground, and then the two will match. Your horizon lines will match. These will never match. There's no tool, there's no trick, there's no nothing that will fix this part.
In a situation where you're in the studio and you're trying to do a composite, would it be stupid to like figure the horizon line out and mark it before you start shooting everything, or would that not be?
No, you can. And actually, it's really simple to actually establish the horizon line. You won't see this on the video, but you'll see it here in real life. So I'm a figure in the studio, right? And you're just going to shoot a picture of me. Temporarily take a card. You can take a card, something like this will actually work. You need to make sure it's level. That's the only thing that matters. Is the top level has to be level, and you just stick it right next to me. This gives you a set of converging lines.
Oh, okay.
You don't have to do anything else. At any rate, so you say, okay, Verser, come on, there's got to be something that you can do here. I'm going to show you, at least we can scale him correctly. We're not going to be able to fix the perspective on this, so this is a cheat, but at least it will not be a 25-foot guy in the train station, unless that's the movie that you're making, the guy who ate the train or whatever it is. So we are going to actually scale him. I'm going to get rid of this guideline, so again, up to the view menu, down to guides, down to clear guides. I'm going to turn the guy back on. So what you need to do if you're going to scale something is you need to work with what you know is a known height. So I have done this a million times. It's just a trick because you guys, your assignment for this week is to actually do a composite. I'm going to give you the figures. You're going to put them into your space, whatever space background you want. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I just want to make sure I'm planting this seed. But I have gone in. How many people in this room know how tall a fire hydrant is?
Like 2 feet?
You guess. You know you can Google that. Try it right now. Somebody jump online really quickly. Google, just say, how tall is a fire hydrant in America?
3 feet.
3 feet. So that gives me scale. And I can then use that to determine how tall a person should be relative to that, or how tall a car should be, or all of those sorts of things. So that's what we're going to do here. So to start with, we are going to transform the guy. Make sure you got the guy selected. Command-T to transform him. Click on the link between the width and the height and just make him smaller. I need something to work with here. I'm going to zoom in here to the back, and what I'm looking for is the door of the train. That is a known height to me. So I'm going to make him smaller, and then I'm going to actually put his foot right on the edge of the platform part that goes into the car, not down on the ground. Down on the ground, I don't know how tall I don't know how tall the door is above the ground, but I do know how tall the door is from the floor of the train. So I'm going to put his foot right there on the door, and then if we continue to scale him, watch this. If you continue to scale him using the width and the height, everything moves. His head comes down, and his feet go up. So then you have to reposition him every time you do a scaling. I don't want to do that. So instead, put him on the ground, put his foot right there on the ledge of this, and then take your anchor point and put it right on his foot. Now when we scale this thing using, the scrubby sliders up at the very top, his foot will stay anchored in that spot, and his head will come down. He will still be scaled. His ratio will still be correct, right? But then I need everybody in this room to close your eyes right now. Imagine you're on a train standing next to the door on the L. Where's the top of the window that you can see out of? Is it above you? Is it above your head? Is it below your head? It's about your head level, maybe slightly above it, right? Kind of roughly above it. So everybody look at me now. Open your eyes. This is where the door, the top of the window should actually be, roughly about here. Wouldn't you guys agree? Right? So that's how I need to scale him. So again, right now, he is slightly a little bit shorter than I think he should be. So I'm going to make him slightly taller. Yeah, something about there. Not quite there.
When you click the check mark after, does the pixelization go away?
Yes.
Oh.
So he is now scaled right for this distance. So I'm going to click on the check mark right now to actually put him in there. But now he would not be standing here floating with 2 toes on this part of the door right here. So you simply move him out and straight down. And he is now scaled correctly for this train part. And so now if we double click and look at this, you can say, well, yeah, this at least makes more sense, right? He is not in perspective, not even close to being in perspective. Look at the horizon line. If we brought the, I'll just drag it back down to where it was because it was right here. The horizon line's running at the very top of his head. So the issue is that I have 2 horizons lines now. I've got one here that it's at, this is for the train station, and I've got another one here for him that's at the very top of his knees. There is no, I've tried every trick in the world to try to scale this in perspective, and there's no way to do it. You can pick the horizon line for the train station. He will go way off. You can pick his horizon line. It will be way off. I've tried putting it right in the middle, in between the two. It's way off. The issue is here is they were shot out of perspective, and there's no way to fix that. But you are far better off having them scaled correctly than you are to have both the perspective and the scale wrong. Does that make sense? All right, we can close all of this up. Hit the F key to get to the black pasteboard, F key again to get out. And then we are going to really quickly, I need everybody to go to, there's another folder in here called Tree Exercise. This is going to be our first composite, full composite from beginning to end. So yeah, we got a lot to get through right here. So this, if I go a little quick, if I lose, I want to keep everybody on this. So please stop me if I start to go a little too fast. Okay, so I'm going to start off here. Again, it's called Tree Exercise. There are 2 files in here called Trees 13 and Trees 19. I want you to select both of those and open both of them at the same time into Photoshop. And you can see in Camera Raw, there's a picture of my wife in the woods, and then there's a picture of the woods without my wife in it. So, what is the advantage I have of shooting her in this situation holding a gray card, a color card? So, going back to my list, you can look at your list. Do I have lighting direction here? Can I tell what it is? Sure I can. I can look at her face. I can look at the ground. I can see where the shadows are on the ground, the shadows under her feet. That is a soft overhead light on top of her. No question about that. Can I tell the exposure in here? Yes. Well, of course I can. I'm going to white balance. You kick the white balance tool, click on the little gray patch next to the red, hover over the white patch, and it says in my histogram up at the very top, I am reading 245, 244, 243. Is that perfect exposure? Yeah, I'm one off, but yes. I mean, yes, right? Remember, perfect exposure, 245 to 250 on your gray card. So now I've got perfect color. I just color balanced it. I've got perfect exposure, correct? I've got lighting direction. I've got a contrast reference. I don't have, there's nothing that's, I can measure this, but I do have a reference for that. I've also got color, saturation. I know where the shadows are. Do I have scale? Of course I do. I've got a person in there. I know how tall she is. And even if it was one of you who was taller than her or one of you that was shorter than her, I've got a really close reference to this, right? So I've got that. I've got depth of field. Do I have that? I do. And then finally, perspective. All of this I have because I've got this figure in here holding that card. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay, so then I shoot a frame of this that looks just like this. So if we want to use all the information that we just got from here, again, color balance is the only thing we've done in here. Come up to the little 3 dots at the top of the thumbnail in the top right-hand corner, click on it and say select all. It'll select the image that doesn't have the girl in it. Then again, go up to the same little 3 dots, click on it again, come down into sync settings because we want to give both images the same white balance. And then again, default includes the white balance. Just hit OK on this. And then you want to open both of these into Photoshop. So you can see mine's set up to, because they're both selected, mine's set to open objects plural. Go ahead and just click on that. And you will open up and you'll have two files, one that's actually got just the woods and one that's got the girl and the woods both. Everybody have this? Make the girl, the one that's got the girl in it, on top first. You're going to then grab that layer, drag it on top of the image that does not have the girl in it, hold down the shift key and it will bring it in centered into it. And then you can close up the figure of just the girl alone. And you do not need to save that. So now I've got a single image in here. The top, it's got two layers. The top layer's got the girl in it and the layer underneath it doesn't. Now you'll see that there's a shift when this happens, and the shift comes about because I was hand holding this. So if I'd been on a tripod, probably would have been smarter, but I'm not that concerned about it. I'm not going to lose any of the information that's important to me in that small shift. Are we good on this part so far?
You dragged what photo into which photo?
So the one of the girl on top of the one that doesn't, but it's the layer. So make her active, grab the layer, and drag it on top of this. Hold down the shift key before you let go, and then let go, and then you can close this one up. Okay, so now we need to go after the figure that's in the studio. So go back to the folder that we were in, the same folder, and now it's the ENG folders. It's the ENG 102, you'll see it, it's frame number 1 and frame number 47. If you click on the first one, hold down the shift key, not the shift key, the command key, and click on the second one, and open both of these into Photoshop. And so I'm in my same scenario right here. I'm going to white balance this, so I'm going to click on the white balancing tool. I'm going to zoom in to my image. And click on the gray patch right here, and then I'm going to read the white value right here. And you can see I'm reading now here in the 250, 253, 252, slightly hot, but there's glare on this card. So if you can see it, there's the way it's oriented here. So actually I'm getting enough of the reading in the detail. If I actually look at her face here as well, remember with Caucasian skin, if you measure a highlight on Caucasian skin and you look at the R channel by itself, you want a reading between 225 and 245. I'm reading a 235, which is perfect for my exposure. I like to have my skin tones a little bit hotter because it bleaches out the blemishes a little bit faster. It makes things a little bit cleaner just to start with. So this is perfect exposure for me. This is also perfect color for me. So here's the thing that you need to think about when you're doing your composites. You may not want your image to be perfectly normal color. You may want to grade it and make it really cyanic or really warm or really, you may want to change all of that. But what you want to do when you're doing your composites is you want everything, every single element to be the same color so that when you put it together, they will all fit as the same color. And then you take your whole composite and you make the whole thing more cyanic, or the whole thing graded bluer, or the whole thing. You change all. But if you start out and everything is its own color, you have just picked the biggest headache that you can possibly imagine because nothing color-wise is going to fit together. So a color card gets me to neutral, perfect color on everything that I shoot. Then when I put it together, I may have to tweak things a little bit, but not that much. And then I can make my entire composite darker, lighter, greener, bluer, whatever I want to make it mood-wise. Then I can process the whole composite as one. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right, so again, I'm going to do the same trick. Click on the little three dots to select all. Click on the little three dots again and sync my settings so that the figure that does not have the color card in it is actually color balanced now. Then I don't need to open the one that has the color card. I just need to open the one of the girl that is that I want to use in my composite. So simply select that one and click on Open Object. And then this too, we are going to drag the layer of this on top of our composite, on top of the one that's actually already got the girl in it. So I'm going to click on the layer of the green screen, drag it on top of the one in the woods, hold down my control key, my shift key, so it brings it in centered. And then I'm going to get rid of the image that was already in there, and I don't need to, the original green screen. So now I've got a single image that's got all three elements in it that I need. I've got the green screen girl, I've got the figure that's in my background, and then I've got a clean background. So those are the three things that I'm actually going to use in here. Are we good on this part? Okay. If you take a look, though, really quickly at this girl, she's standing on a whole set of sandbags. There's a reason for that. So what I did, again, you shoot your locations first. Then I'm going to show this to you in Capture One. This is where I actually put it together. You can actually see there's an overlay tool that exists in Capture One that allows you to actually overlay certain images on other images. So in my case, I've actually got the overlay image of the person of my wife in the woods, and then I can actually overlay it on the set that I'm actually doing out in the green screen part. And if you zoom into here just slightly, you will actually see I have recreated the rocks using sandbags. Why would you do that? Again, the more that she's not standing there with 2 feet flat on the ground, she's got a foot tilted up, another foot that's down lower than that. The more that you can actually recreate your environment, the more believable your composite is. So I do all of those tricks. Again, the reason that you shoot your locations first, because you can actually use this here. So I'm going to go back into Photoshop. So that's basically what's going on here. Now, the way that you then scale this and line this up is you simply drop the opacity of the girl that's on the green screen, and you can see where she needs to go. So I'm going to zoom into this. I'm going to hit the V key to get the move tool and bring her up, because that's where the sandbags are along those rocks. And then the scale part of this. So you can see right now, my wife, who's in the background here, is actually taller than this girl. My wife is 5'8", and she's wearing tennis shoes. This model is 5'10", and she's wearing heels. She has got to be taller. So again, I'm going to click Command T to transform the girl, the model that's on here. I am going to drag the anchor point and put it down at her foot so that her feet do not move. I'm going to click on the link between the width and the height, and then I'm simply going to use the scrubby slider over H, and I'm going to drag to make her slightly taller than my wife, and then hit OK. And then grab my opacity and drag it all the way open again.
Wait, can you do that one more time?
Sure. Where did I get?
When you were just scaling, are you,
I'm just making her taller than my wife.
so you're,
So again, right now she's shorter than my wife, but their feet match up.
yeah.
So I'm Command T to transform the girl. Put the anchor point on, because if you don't put the anchor point, if the anchor point stays in the middle of her body, her head gets taller and her feet go down further, and then they don't line up anymore. I'm just saving myself steps. So I'm just going to put the anchor point at her feet, and now when I actually click on the link between width and height, her feet don't move, but her head does. So then I just make her head taller than my wife's. Again, I'm eyeballing this, but I'm saying, yeah, that's probably 2 or 3 inches for the heel and the being taller. And, if I'm within an inch, believe me, I'll be fine. And then simply say OK to that. And again, then crank your opacity all the way back up again. So I'm not going to go through knocking this girl out. I've already done a knockout of her, so I need everybody to go back to that same folder, the tree exercise folder. And you'll see at the very top, there's a thing called Composite Body 2. Open that into Photoshop. And then again, simply drag this layer on top of the figure of the whole scene that we've been working on. Hold down the Shift key so it comes in place. double click on the hand, and you can see she's pretty close in scale to the one that I just did. So I'm gonna hit the V key to get the move tool and just move her up. She's almost identical to this. She's a little bit taller, but I'm not gonna worry about that too much. I could scale her down a little bit, but I don't really need to worry about that too much. We're close enough. And then simply throw away the green screen layer and the one that's got my wife on it. And this is the composite that I'm gonna begin to build. Now, when I shot this, I had every intention of having this foot right on the edge of this rock. So I'm simply going to slightly move her over and up. And this is how I'm going to start. Questions about this so far? All right, you guys should save this file right now. It's not a part of your homework, but this is something that you can refer back to. So I'm going to go ahead and save this really quickly. All right, so there's serious problems with this. The first thing, though, is that I want to start with is that she's simply not anchored in this space. We need shadows to do that. I'm going to show you, we're going to get into very complex shadows next week. I'm going to show you how to do really simple ones right now. So to do a really simple one, you want to click on the tree layer. That's where we're going to start. Click on the tree layer. You want your shadows always to be on top of your background, but underneath your figure. Because if your figure would never have a shadow of itself on top of itself, that is an impossibility, right? So if I'm going to put a shadow under her foot here, there would never be any of that shadow would never be on top of her foot. She's the one creating the shadow. You can't have, you guys get where I'm going. Okay, so I'm going to put an empty layer in between the two, so just a blank layer. I'm going to double click on it and call it Shadow 1. And then I'm going to use the gradient tool to build my shadow. So to do that, you hit the G key. It will get you the gradient tool. Up at the very top, also do me a favor before we even get started, hit the D key to default your foreground and background colors to black and white. If black is your background color, hit the X key. You need black as your foreground color just for it to look a little bit, make a little bit more sense here. So if you hit the G key, you'll get the gradient tool. Up in the top now, in the options bar, you want to click on this drop down. There are two types of gradients that you can work with in Photoshop now. There's a normal gradient, or it's actually the newer one, and then a classic gradient. The newer one has got a lot more control handles on it. I want to avoid the confusion right now, so I'm going to ask you to do that. Work with the classic gradient to begin with. And then in terms of the drop-down menu that's right next to the right of that, if you click on this, there's a series of pre-built gradients. If you open up the basics group at the very top, there's 3 of them in here. The first of the basics gradient is foreground to background color. In our case, it's black to white. The next one is foreground to transparent. The next one is a standard black and white, regardless of what your foreground and background colors are. You want to pick the one in the middle. It is foreground to transparent. And then finally, along the top, there are 5 icons that are rolling along here. These are the type of gradients that you can actually pull. The one that's on the far left is a linear gradient. We will talk about what these others are later on, but I'm running out of time, so I got to make sure I get through all of this. You want to pick the second one from the left. This is a circular gradient. And then with your, so click on that. And again, normal blending mode on all this, 100% opacity. We're going to zoom in kind of closer to this. I'm going to start with her right foot over here. And you can see she's just floating in this space because there is, what we need to build here is what we call contact shadows. It's deep shadows that happen right where something is being in contact with the ground. Yes?
When you're compositing stuff, regardless of what it is, if the shadow, like, if you had photographed her on a white background without sandbags and there was a shadow already attached to her foot,
Yes.
would you select that also?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Is that preferred over adding in?
Yeah, it depends. Again, because this is a really bumpy background, and that shadow wouldn't be, if it was a seamless, it wouldn't be bumpy at all, and you would need to put bumps into it. So it's, yeah.
If it's in studio stuff?
What I will tell you this is right now, shadows are the bane of everyone who does compositing's existence. It's the thing that you will spend the most time with and get the most frustrated about. Got that to look forward to. Okay, so here we go, guys. Back to this. So I'm going to just do this right next to, so just to the right of her body. I'm simply going to click and drag down. Don't worry about how big it is, whatever. And it makes a circular gradient. And in the center of this, it's dark, and then it fades out to transparent. That is hugely important. It's not fading out to white. It fades out to transparent. So I've just got this blob. Hit Command T to bring up the transform dialog box. I need to crush this thing into a pancake. If you grab the top handle of the transform dialog box and you simply pull down, it will crush it from the top to the bottom, but it does not crush this evenly. I need it to be crushed evenly. So I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. Instead, you grab that handle, hold down the Option key, and now when you grab and pull down, it will pull the bottom one up as well. This shadow is now too wide, so I'm still going to hold down the Option key and pull in one of the side handles, and I get it kind of close to what I want. And then I need to move this underneath her shoe. To move it, you can click on the inside of the transform box and move it. If you get too close to the anchor point, though, it will grab the anchor point and you will move that instead, which is of no help to you at all. So don't get too close to the anchor point. But I'm going to drag this and I'm going to bring it right under her foot and kick it up just a little bit like this. And then this looks pretty good to me. However, you'll see that there's shadow that is now on both sides of her shoes. There's nothing that would create that. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. I'm going to click the check mark to say OK. Then I'm going to hit the E key to get the eraser tool. In your eraser tool, you want it set up. You want it to be a brush, 100% opacity, and I'm going to keep my flow down around a 15, 16%, something like that. I am going to go back to my tablet.
How do I get the move tool thing to
The-
crush the shadow?
Do you still have the transform dialog box?
How do I get that? What do I press?
Oh, you got it.
Command?
Yeah,
Oh,
you
there
got
we
it.
go.
All right,
And
so
then I
then
just hit option, right?
option and just crush it. No, complete. Yeah, perfect, good. And then again, you're moving that exactly. Perfect.
Thank you.
What happens when if like I'm doing the gradient and it makes the whole background black except for where the gradient's at? Like it's like
I'm not sure what you got selected up here, but it's not that. So just go back in space before you did your name, do your name change. Go back that, that's part. G key, click on the drop down menu here, and click the one in the middle. And say OK to that. And why is this flipping the opposite? Now click and pull the gradient out and just see what happens. Somehow this thing has gotten inverted, and I need to get through the rest of this, so hold on tight. No, we will figure this out after everybody else splits. But it's doing the exact opposite. It's going from transparent to black, and that's not what you want to do. Okay, so the E key to get the eraser tool, and then simply scrub away the shadows that are on both sides of this. And you need to do it on both sides completely. There's nothing that would explain that shadow. Now this shadow is also, from my point of view, it's still too deep. So I'm going to hit the V key to get the move tool and just use my arrow keys to tap this up into space, so that it actually is in the proper space. And this looks correct to me now. If you actually turn the shadow on and off, you can actually see where it is in here and how much you're actually getting here. Now, I also feel like the shadow is too dark, so you can actually drop the opacity of this back down a little bit so that it doesn't seem to be so completely jet black in there. It's looking like an extension of her shoe. All right, I'm going to make one more shadow layer really quickly. So I'm going to click on layer 1, and I'm going to call this shadow 2.
how do you change the brush for the eraser tool to not be like you had a circular brush? Mine's the like weird one.
Oh, it's still weird. So again, if you hit the E key, it's come down. The E key, hang on one second. Sorry, I'm in the middle of renaming my. Okay, E key right here. click on this part right here. Again, go into general brushes and click the very top one. Okay, we've got to make a shadow then for the other foot really quickly. So again, shadow number 2. Sorry. G key to get the gradient tool. Click and drag. Command T to do the transform dialog box. Hold down the option key, click and crush this. Then you can actually, her foot here is on an angle. You can rotate your shadow as well. So I'm just going to slightly rotate mine. It also needs to be made a little bit more narrow. It also needs to be longer. It needs to stretch out because I want the fade part to be behind it. I need the really solid part right underneath the front of her shoe. Pull out a little less of the angle so that the angles actually match. And that actually looks pretty good to me right now. Again, I'm a little bit rushed. I would take a little bit more time. But I'm going to go ahead and hit the check mark for this. Hit the E key to get the eraser. You need to erase all of the shadow that's right behind her foot because there is nothing that would explain that. There's also nothing that would explain the shadow that's right in front of her foot, so I've gotten rid of that. And then double click on the hand and you can actually see now my shadows have actually anchored her into this space. So that is the first move that I actually need to make on this. Questions? Is this working for you guys? All right. No matter where you are, save your work right now. We need to get to the nitty-gritty. How do we balance this image to fit the scene? Because right now, it is way out of balance. Look at how dark her jacket is compared to the whole rest of my scene. If you were really there, that's a soft light that's coming in. It would never be that dark, ever. So we need to fix all of this. To do that, there's this thing called check layers that I am going to give to you. It is an action that you are going to load, and you are going to use these for the rest of your life. We will look at what they are or how they got built later, but I just want to show you how to use them because that's really the important part. So to get to that, come to your action palette, select it, then go to the menu that's to the side, click on that, and you're going to come down to Load Actions, and it'll open up a dialog box, and then you need to navigate to our session number 9. We're in 9 right now, right? Yes. We're in 9, retouching 9 in the student folder. There's a thing right here called checklayerset.atn. You need to select that and then click Open. Did everybody find this? Because if you don't have this, you're not going to be able to do the assignment this week. So I need to make sure everybody has this. Are we good? All right, click Open. I'm going to click Cancel because I've already got a set. And then make sure that you go to the very top and select the figure on the very top. All of your check layers need to go to the very top of your image, and then all the adjustments based on them will go in between. So all the way up to the very top. And then you need to find check layers in your action set over here. This is mine right here. Remember, you want to select the parent, the very top one, and then simply come down and click on the arrow that points to the right, and you should end up with something that looks pretty wild. And you're done. You just print this up really big. You get a gallery to take you on. You become a really famous artist for doing really weird shit like this, and you're happy ever after. You come find me at the home. You bring me liquor and salt and tell me that you've succeeded. And I may not remember your name, but I will remember your face. So, and we'll trade stories about how, you know. So you're right. Okay, so what these check layers, no, go ahead.
Mine, I don't know what I did. It's not working.
Did you select the very top layer first?
No, don't come over here. Yes, I did.
All right, so you're clicking on the check layer. Yeah, click on the very top, the set part. Yeah, and then click on the little arrow that points that way. No, the one that's down at the bottom. That guy right. No, that guy right there. So then click on the check layer part, the one that's inside of it, and then click on that layer right there. Oh fuck! And this is not working. Did you get yours to work?
I just uninstalled.
Yeah.
installed it.
And then click on the check layer part underneath it. Click on that. No, yeah, and then click on the run. There you go. Okay. So what we've got here, guys, is 3 things that we're actually going to use. We've got a luminosity check, a color check, and a saturation check. To use them, right now, the color one is on. We're going to turn that off. So if you look up at the very top of your check layers, there is 2 that are in a group. There is this color fill and hue saturation. They work together, and they are for our color check. And you can either turn off the eyeball for the group itself, or you can turn off both of those. It doesn't really matter. Then underneath it is a saturation check layer, and then underneath that is a luminosity check layer. Click on the luminosity check layer to turn it on. Now, this is not just a normal black and white adjustment. This is a very specific black and white adjustment that maintains how we perceive tone in color. That is not the way tone or color actually works. We don't have time to go into exactly the explanation of that. I'm more than happy to stay here and show it to you after our time is up, but we've got like 5 minutes to get through a whole part here, right here. So I'm just saying, this is based on human perception. So what we're looking at here, what you want to do is you want to make adjustments on this image that make it look like a cohesive, believable black and white image. The problem that we have here is that the figure is way too contrasty. That's my first problem right here. So to fix that, a lot of people would put a curve on here and try to just change the contrast. That never works. What instead you're going to do is you're going to select the body. So go ahead and make this active, because you're going to end up using this trick for pretty much every composite you do the rest of your life. So anyway, select the body. You're going to come up to the image menu, down to adjustments, down to shadows and highlights. This is a smart filter. It should be in the filter group, but it is not. Anyway, if you click on it, it will open up. If you have a small little box that looks like this, click on the show more options. It will actually open this guy up, and by default, it starts to lift the shadows. It doesn't do anything to your highlights. You'll see there's sections up here at the top. Shadows are being lifted by 35%. If you click on the shadow slider at the top and take it to the right, you'll see it'll actually lift the shadows even more. Or if you're being lifted too much, or your contrast is being lifted too much, you can go ahead and drop it back down. I'm going to leave mine right around 35%. I'm not going to touch the highlights. This to me is working well for the outside of the coat. It's not working well for these areas that are inside the coat, but for the outside of the coat, it's working pretty well. For the rest of her body, it's looking more like a black and white photograph would look. If you turn off your preview on and off, you can see, yes, we're getting much better to how this should ultimately be. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay to that. Now you'll notice that it is a smart filter. It's right down here. It's forever adjustable. You can double click on it again and go in and fine tune this thing still. So I'm going to hit cancel out of that. So this part's good, but what's not good is that I've still got all of this black that's in the interior of her shirt. I need to fix that. The interior of her jacket. So I need to fix that part. So to do that, I'm going to click again on the body. I'm going to add a curve adjustment above this. So click on the adjustment layers, come up and put a curve on here. Now your first move with this is that we need to actually restrict this to only controlling the luminosity. Remember, in an RGB world, if you change the color of something, you change its tone. If you change the tone of something, you change its color and saturation. We can't have that happen. We just want to change the luminosity of this. So you are going to change the blending mode from normal all the way down to luminosity. And then we need to clip this to the body so that when we change it, right now if we change this curve, it changes everything. I just want to change the body. So hover your cursor between the 2 layers, hold down your option key and click. You will then clip it down, and now when you move this, it'll only impact the body. Then you're going to take the black point slider and you're just going to push it up, and you're going to push it up till she gets grayed out. Is everybody with me so far? All right, we're going to invert this layer mask now. Command I. We're going to grab a brush, the B key. I'm going to zoom in on this figure just a little bit. Make your brush, again, a very soft brush. Normal blending mode, 100% opacity, and a 2% flow will be great. I'm going to go to my tablet, working with white as my foreground color. I'm going to open up this area of the mask to actually let that curve impact the really dark shadows. So I'm simply going to start scrubbing in here. And you can see you'll start to open the whole thing up and keep moving quick. And you can see that we'll actually get this whole thing open. Get her crotch area as well, the area where there's shadows in here, her arms in there a little bit, her arm on the other side. You can continue to work here a little bit. So I'm just zooming around here really pretty quickly here because we are running out of time. And then you can see what this curve is actually doing now. It's actually lifting all of those parts open. I'm going to double click on the hand and then take a look at this and say, okay, this is looking more like a black and white photograph, the way a black and white photograph should look, wouldn't you say? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, turn off your curve, your luminosity check layer right now. And this is the difference that we've made in here so far. Now, we're not quite correct on this. It's not a believable composite to me right now, but we're really close. So scroll up to the very top. I do the color before I do saturation. It doesn't make sense to change your saturation if your color is off. So do your color next. To do that, it's the top two check layers. So if you go up to the very top, it's the hue saturation one, and it's also the color fill one. And if you do this, the reason that hue saturation is on there and the reason what this check layer is doing is it's making this the most extreme difference in color that I can possibly get. So you can see that the girl is very blue on a very warm background. We need to fix that. They need to be closer to one another. So to do that, we're going to go back down to the curve that we just built, the one that we just put on there. Click on this curve. Again, we are now going to put a color balance layer on top of this, but you have to have all of these adjustment layers right next to one another because they all need to be clipped down to the image. If you put something in between, you break the clipping part. So select the curve that we just did. We're going to add an adjustment layer, and the adjustment layer that we add is going to be color balance. The minute you do that, you want to clip it to the figure. So hover between the color balance and the curve that's right underneath it. Hold down your Option key and click to clip it. But then again, I only want to change color. So you've got to change the blending mode from normal all the way down to color. And then look at what we've got. In the color balanced palette that's up here, you've got a yellow-blue axis, a magenta-green axis, and a cyan-red axis here. So our first move in this is that it is too blue. So I'm going to grab the slider that goes towards the yellow, and I'm going to start pushing it towards the yellow. Now, as long as you start to see a change, you're good. But you will see at a certain point, you don't get a significant change anymore. Like I'm at a minus 16 right now. If I keep going all the way over here, I don't get that much of a change. You don't want to push this thing any harder than it needs. So I'm going to bring mine back to a point where I just start to see it really sort of get in. So again, I'm at a minus 17, minus 18, something like that. Minus only indicates that you're going to the left. If it was a positive value, you'd be going to the blue. However, there's a lot of orange in here as well, and I don't have, this is a lot of green in here. It's not a green magenta slider. What makes orange? Orange is a combination of yellow and red. What I'm missing here is red. So grab your red slider and start pushing towards the red, and you will actually see your image start to get, and again, you don't want to go any further than you need to go till the point that it looks like it blends in with my background. And when that happens, you can now turn off your check layers for color, and boom, we're getting a lot closer in here. And then finally, I'm going to turn on my saturation check layer. In your saturation check layer, what happens is that anything that is saturated is lighter, anything that is not saturated is darker. Now, you don't pay any attention to her outfit at all because it's black. There's no color in there at all anyway. It's just her face. If you look at her face and you then look at the background, all of the leaves in the background are this hyper saturated color stuff because it's fall. That's not what I want to match. What I want to match is more this area that's down in here, all of this. If you look at the tonal structure of this, her face is too light. It's too saturated. So to finish this is our final move. Come back and click on your color balance layer. We need to add another adjustment layer above this, which is going to be saturation. So click on this, and we're going to add a hue saturation layer on top of it. Again, you're going to hover your cursor between both of those layers and hold down your Option key and click to clip it. You're going to then change your blending mode from normal down to saturation so that all you are changing is saturation. And then finally, I'm going to grab my saturation slider, and as you start to pull it down, you'll see her face get slightly darker. And what I'm looking for is to get a blend of this with this down in here. And I think that -16 is a little too aggressive, so I'm going to back it off a little bit, like a -14. And then undo your saturation check layer. Boom, lacka lacka.
I think it's boom shakalaka.
There you go. So really quickly, do a history snapshot of this. So just click on history snapshot and we'll call it finished. And then I want you to turn off everything that we just did. Turn off all the adjustment layers. And then turn off the eyeball for the hue for the shadow highlight thing, and do another snapshot of that, and call it start. And then go up to the very top and go between finished and start. You take this image out to the dean's office right now and go into the dean's office and say, yeah, I just shot these pictures. I want to know what you think. They are not going to look at that and think that that is composite at all. Game changer. Questions? All right. We got through it, guys. That's it. So anyway, for next week, really quick. For the assignment for next week, there are 2 composites in here. There's one, I've already done the knockouts for you. You have to use one of these 2. This one or this one. You are to put this on a real background. Do not make a man-made background. So like some people, we'll talk about man-made backgrounds next week. But it doesn't. It can be one of your pictures. You can go out and shoot something. It can be something old that you have. It can be found imagery. You can go online and find something. Do not do anything artificial intelligent-wise. I want a real background that's got real lighting that gives you the same challenges that we just had. And I will see you guys next week.
So we have to shoot for the assignment next week?
No.
Oh.
No, that's what I just said. You don't need to shoot. Did everybody get on the sign-in list?
No.
Well, get on it now then.